Good evening, and welcome back to the Let's Talk Destiny talk show. I am your host, Jamie Green, and once again, I'd like to remind you to like our YouTube channel and subscribe to it because there's a lot of great information over there. As I said before, we've been doing this for a little over 2 years now, so I'm sorry, I'm trying to adjust this. There are tons of videos over there that will absolutely bless your life, and I promise you that you will not regret um, signing on. I mean, subscribing to that channel. Tonight, I'm excited because I have my friend Belinda Harris with me. And if you're watching this video, I ask you to like it and share it. That will help us to get this message out to that many more people. It is available now for you to share. So, you can share, invite your friends, because this is a topic that many of us are touched by. First, before we get into our conversation, I'd like to say a little bit about my guest tonight. Belinda Harris is a native of Salisbury, Maryland, but she moved away to Charlotte, North Carolina for a while, well, for several years actually, and then she recently returned back here to the Eastern Shore. She has worked in marketing, development, and public relations. She's an entrepreneur, a mother, and clearly a kind and generous soul that looks to help other people be the best that they are, to show them how to promote the best versions of themselves. And tonight, I'm blessed to have her with me because what we're going to talk about tonight is something that I've been wanting to talk about for a while, having lived through it and having friends that are currently going through it now. But it's not something for some reason, people don't want to always talk about. But I'm one of those people that I believe there's a purpose and a reason for everything. And the format for this show is I always want it to be purpose driven. I don't want it just to be, just let's get together and do nothing. I wanted to have a purpose. And so tonight, our purpose is to talk about parenting the parents. How do you handle it when the roles are reversed? So before we get into that, Belinda, I want you to talk to us a little bit about your parents. Your parents were staples in this community. Everybody knew Mr. and Mrs. Harris. But for those who didn't know them, tell us a little bit about your parents.
Yeah, so they moved here in the 60s. They both grew up in West Virginia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we
I
used to go.
didn't even know that.
Yeah, West Virginia. We used to go there every summer to see my relatives and things of that nature. But yeah, so they moved here, both educators. Mom taught second grade most of her career. Dad was a band director. He taught at
Uh-huh.
the Black High School before, integration, Salisbury High School. And then he took the job at Bennett Jr. And that's kind of where he made, I think, his name, between Salisbury High School and Bennett Jr., because it was just the time frame, that he was teaching. Schools had just become integrated. He was trying to merge, the different races together. And a lot of people remember those times as challenging, but being in the band made it a lot easier. And
Yes.
some of the things that dad, taught them and would say to them, so it's very heartwarming when I hear those stories. But yeah, they were very involved with NAACP, very involved with their church for many years, Mills Memorial. Mom actually helped name that church.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah, they love Salisbury. This is their home. Um, they loved it. So yeah, and eventually, some of Dad's students got together and named part of Jersey Road after him down there between.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
I was gonna tell you to mention that. Yeah,
yeah,
we got a part of a street named after Mr. Harris.
yeah, I thought that was very sweet. That was very sweet. Some of his students kept saying, they wanted, former students, obviously, because they retired many years ago, but yeah, we're just like, I want to do something. We want to do something. My mom was also a member of Phi Delta Kappa, which is a teacher sorority. She was very active in that. I think she held a office at one point in that sorority. I know I found a lot of Phi Delta Kappa things in this house that I've passed on to her sorority sisters, so they can keep. But yeah, that was a big part of her life as well.
Awesome, awesome. Yes, everybody in this community knew about Mr. and Mrs. Harrison. They were always a positive influence. And wherever you saw them, they always were the same. Their spirits were the same. They always spoke. They never, made you feel like, stop bugging me. Um, yeah, they took the time to converse with you, and a lot of people will always remember them that way. And one of the reasons I want to talk about this topic, Belinda, is because not only I feel like my personal philosophy is not only do we have a voice, but we are a voice.
Mhm.
Each and every one of us is a voice, and we have the ability, the unique ability to speak out in ways that nobody else can do because nobody else is us.
Right.
And so you and I were talking about when you start noticing some changes in your parents with regard to whether it's dementia or Alzheimer's or whatever the case may be, when you first start noticing these things, you get kind of, there's a fear because you don't really know. You see these changes happening and you don't know if you're supposed to do something. How did you feel when you first started noticing changes in your parents?
Um, it made me sad actually because, as most of our parents are, they're our leaders. They're the people we look up to, and to see them growing older and for lack of a better word, deteriorating of sorts.
Exactly.
Um, it's really kind of sad to watch. I remember something very simple when Dad first started having problems walking. And they were both very prideful people, and I think a lot of that boomer generation are very prideful people. And he didn't want to use a cane, and I'm like, Dad, you're gonna fall down. Like I
Yeah,
need
yeah. Oh my God, take the cane.
right, just get a cane. And he was walking funny, and so finally he realized, so that was really just the start of it, and I can't even tell you how many years ago that was. But yeah, it just kind of made me sad for, the obvious reasons of watching your parents get older. But then you also think about the fact that, I'm getting older too. I am becoming them now, so you think about all of those things as you watch them transition.
Absolutely. And then another thing that we incurred as we saw mom deteriorating, and that's okay to use that word because that's exactly what's happening. Um, she she went from a woman who traveled across the country preaching the gospel, singing. Everybody knew Pastor Green, to
Mhm.
this woman who didn't know how to even get to the church from home. She would be in an area, not have any idea where she was,
Right.
um, and see people and not know who they were. And it hurts. Like you say, it makes you sad because this is the person, these are the people that you went to for guidance, you went to for counsel. You watched them and you wanted to walk like them and talk like them and do certain things like them. And now you're like, oh my God, something's happening and I don't know how to fix it. I don't know what to do.
Mhm.
We became very, as our parents started deteriorating, getting older, aging, their bodies started breaking down. We started being very private. Like we were more and more trying to keep them away from people and
Mhm.
people away from them. A lot of
Mhm.
people didn't like that, but we saw it as a way of protecting them. Did you experience that at all?
Yes. Yes. A lot of people. So when my mom first started showing signs of dementia, I will be honest with you, I was in denial. I just thought she was getting older and having some memory issues. And, you have to remember, I wasn't here. So
Right,
my
right,
interaction was only over the phone and the few times I would come home, right? I would
gotcha.
come home generally about twice a year. I would come back to Salisbury. But my sister noticed it.
Yeah,
And she kept saying, something's going on, something's going on. And I'm like, no, she's just getting old. You get old, you forget stuff, da da da. But, eventually, unfortunately, that disease progresses and she got worse. And we did try to shelter her a little bit. My mom still wanted to live her normal life of sorts because, some of that normal procedure
yeah,
helps them,
right, right.
and a lot of people when I made a post about it on Facebook because people had found out that we eventually had to put mom in assisted living, and that's a a decision that we came to as a family.
Mm-hmm.
People were shocked because number one, they hadn't seen her, or if they had seen her, she was very good at hiding it.
Okay.
So she was very good at still smiling and being her normal self. But then she would turn to me after a conversation and say, "Who was that?"
Right, right, right. Exactly.
And it was somebody that I know she should have known. So she was very good at hiding it. A lot of people didn't know. They didn't know. Some did, some of her like church members and things, they
Yeah.
noticed changes in her, people that she saw frequently because down to like probably just a few weeks before we ended up having to put her in assisted living, she was still going to church on Sundays.
Okay.
And the church, luckily, is right down the street. I
Yeah.
could walk there from here. But she remember if she knew it was Sunday, because sometimes she didn't know, what day it was. But if she knew it was Sunday, she was going to church.
In
Um,
that same day, I want to stop you right there because my mother was the same way. Like, she may not get anything else right the whole rest of the week,
mm-hmm.
but on, on Sunday, she wanted to go to church.
Yeah.
And then it got to the place where she just wanted to go to church. It didn't matter what day it was. Church was her place where she was comfortable, the
Yep.
most comfortable. And there were literally times my sister Kelly and I would have to put her in the car, which was a whole nother adventure,
Yes.
getting her out the car, in and out the car. But we would have to drive her over there to show her that there's nobody here, mom. There's nobody at the church.
Right.
But she still wanted to go. But with regard to the secrecy and privacy, the people that don't have to deal with it on a daily basis, they don't really understand. Like in our situation, mom and dad were pastors. So there were literally hundreds and hundreds of people that, they were used to interacting with. And now you're saying, no, you can't talk to Pastor Green. No, you can't, you can come and visit her, but she can't come see you, that kind of thing. And
Mhm.
people were getting offended by it. But we had to do what was best for her because now she's going out in public and she's doing some like really outlandish things. Um, and we have to protect, number one, her dignity
Right.
because we want people to remember her the way she was. We don't want her out in the street acting like some of the things she was doing. We
Right.
don't want people to remember that. And so, as a family member, you have to do what you think is best for them. How was it? And I know that there will be somebody listening to us today who will have the same question. How did you all come to make the decision to put her in assisted living? Because we had a fight with that in our family.
You know, outside of watching my parents pass away, that was probably one of the hardest things we ever had to do. Um, we all at that point obviously were aware of how sick my mother was. Um, but we had to do it for her safety and ours. Because of what you're saying. Unfortunately, a lot of people who go through dementia and Alzheimer's, I feel like they go through similar things.
Yeah.
And sundowners is one of those
Oh
things.
my goodness, yes.
And, at night, she wanted to leave. And I would be afraid that, one of us wouldn't be up and she. Would be gone. And then my father, even though he understood, he's a very smart person, he understood that she had this disease, but he never could come to grips with it, if I'm making any sense.
You're making absolute sense because my father was the exact same way to the day he died. I
Yeah.
honestly believe my sister and I talk about this sometime that mom not getting better, but because he was a man of faith and he had prayed for hundreds and hundreds of people to be healed, and he just could not understand why his wife wasn't getting better. And personally, I think those last few years of his life, mom's illness really just took him down, like
Mhm.
just really took him down. Because for the longest time, like you said, he wouldn't even acknowledge that there was anything wrong with her. When the doctor told us to stop letting her drive because she was getting lost and stuff like that, Daddy was very upset.
Mhm.
We would take the keys, or when he would be like, "It's her car; she can drive it if she wants to." And it took it took her ending up all the way in Snow Hill and not knowing where she
Oh
was.
my goodness.
Yeah, for him to finally, okay, that's it. We're not gonna let her drive anymore. But he still every day held on to the belief that he said this to us right before he died. He said, "Every morning I wake up, I want to wake up to my old Essie, and every day when I don't wake up to her, to my old Essie, I don't know what to do."
Yeah.
And so it was that period of, there's nothing wrong with her. She's just tired. The church is stressing her out. She probably needs a vacation. She's got a lot going on. And we're like, no, it's a little more than that.
Yeah.
Um, and before you continue, I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, you're
Um,
fine.
Someone did have a question. I'm not sure if you can read it, if you can see it. Doretta wants to know, did you all ever have to be stern with your parents to protect them from themselves?
Absolutely. A- absolutely. On more than one occasion. On more than one occasion. That I say all the time to people, you never want to see your parent, loved one, whoever, have any type of illness, no type of disease, nothing, right? And none of it's good. I don't care what you have, right? But to watch a person who's always been strong, like your mother, like my mother, who's been pillars in the community, have helped people, have taken care of their households and their children and all this, to watch them deteriorate like that is one of the hardest things you ever have to do when you're dealing with a parent being ill. And I definitely, and my sister, I say I, but when I say I
I
mean the both of us,
understand. Hmm.
we both were very involved. Um, Definitely had to stop her from doing certain things, or they go through a violent stage too, of hurting us even, because I think the good thing to remember is that they're just afraid, they're confused, they don't know what's going on,
Yes, exactly.
and that was hard for us because I will admit that I feel like we didn't do enough education about the disease at first, right? But once we did, it was easier
Right,
to handle it, right? Because
right.
whatever their reality is, whether they're calling you their sister, their brother, their mom, or you just got to roll with that because
That
that's
is that is a very key point, Belinda. Whatever their reality is their reality,
right.
and you can't keep arguing with them saying that's not it, because that just makes them more
That,
agitated,
right.
because it is for them, it is their reality. And
Yeah.
like you said at the very beginning, you're not educated, you're not familiar, you've never been through this before. You just know something strange is going on. And I used to catch myself sometimes just staring at my mom, trying to process what is going on, what is she thinking, what is she feeling.
Right.
um and I know it had to be scary, because at the very beginning she would say she didn't do something, and we would be like, "Yeah, mom, you did do that." And then she would be like, "Well, I don't believe I did that." And you could tell it was like, and then, or sometimes she would say, "Well, if I did that, I must really be crazy." And we're like, "We're not saying you're crazy. We're just saying that this is what happened."
Right.
And then as time progressed, like you said, with their violence, I remember one time my mom hit me so hard.
Yeah.
I
I know,
still, to this day, my eye starts watering,
girl.
because she hit me in my eye. And, and Dad, I was trying to help her in the bathroom, and Daddy was in the other room. And when she slapped me, he yelled, "Oh my God, what was that noise?" Because he's
Um,
assuming something has happened to her. So
right.
here I come out the bathroom holding my eye, and I'm yelling, "Your wife slapped me in my eye. That's why."
That's what's going on.
And for about an hour, I couldn't even see. It was all blurry. And was 5 minutes later, she was rubbing on my arm. "Hey, baby, how you doing?" She like totally had forgot that incident ever happened.
Right.
So It is a challenge. It is a challenge. Oh,
It definitely is a challenge. And because my father never completely accepted it, right? That was also part of the reason why we had to put her in assisted living, because honestly, I love my dad, but he wasn't helping.
right.
He was, he wasn't helping matters, because he just couldn't comprehend it. It just, this woman he'd been married to for 60 plus years, who is this person? And it was just very hard for all of us. So we just knew that for her safety, for dad's safety, and for somebody to be looking over her, we looked at several different places before we made a decision as to, where to put her, where we felt comfortable.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's the hardest thing to watch and go through and try to process what's happening. The day my mom forgot who I was just broke my heart. I hadn't been here. My sister was here, but I had been going back and forth to Charlotte, and I walked at the door, and she knew I was family, right? Because I looked just like her.
Indeed, you do. I'm
So
just looking at you now thinking, boy, she looks just like her mom. Yeah.
she knew I was family, but she always would be like, hey, like when she didn't know who you were, but she knew she should know you,
Mhm.
she'd be like, hey, girl. And I'm like, hey, and I just played along with her, you know what
Yeah.
I mean? And she would be like, well, you look just like me. And I'm like, yeah, I do. And, so once I found a way to just kind of make my mama laugh, and that helped. I would just play along with whatever she was saying. I would talk junk to her. Like one night she put some clothes on because she wanted to leave. It was like 10 o'clock at night, and I started joking. I was like, "Where we going? We going to the club? Let me go change my clothes." And she's like, "Ah, shoot, girl, we ain't going to no club."
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that was my way of just dealing with it
Yeah.
and trying to calm her down and keep her. And another thing I want to say, Jamie, is it's so imperative with especially people with dementia, of course, with any disease, of course, but to make sure they're on the right medications, because that helps. And these medications seem so strong.
Yeah.
But once she did get on the right medication, we did see, I mean, of course it didn't bring her memory back, right? But it did help some of her being sad and violent and the mood
Yeah. Yeah.
swings and all
The
that.
extremes. Yeah.
Right. It did help even a lot of that out. She hated taking medicine, so we had to make her take it, right? But
Yeah.
once she did, it did help. It did help.
And we also found out, in addition to medications, we found out some changes that we could make in her diet.
Mm-hmm.
There were some things that we were allowing her to eat that were just making things worse, and we didn't realize that.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's important, and this is what one of the things that Belinda and I are saying at this moment. It is extremely important to get informed and educated, so that you're not caught off guard. You can like spare yourself some stress. Trust me, physically and mentally, caring for a parent is stressful. Period. It's okay, but when there is mental deterioration involved, it's like, oh my God, like how many times a day do I have to keep saying this same thing and you're not getting it in your head? You're like, and then you have to find what keeps them calm, what works for that individual.
Yeah.
My mother always liked to be doing things with her hands. So first, we put her in an adult daycare,
Mm-hmm.
but she started roaming around bothering other people so much that she couldn't go back over there anymore. Oh my God, it just takes me back to my grandchildren. It's like you like going backwards again,
Right.
when they get put out the daycare center, but because they keep taking other kids' toys. And so then, but she always, but if you give her something to do with her hand, so I literally would put all the towels and washcloths in a basket and
Mm-hmm.
give it to her, and she would sit there for hours
Wow.
folding those same things over and over, because when she wasn't looking, after she had folded them up, I would unfold them and put them back in the basket.
Wow, that was a great idea.
So she either was sitting there folding those items for hours, or she was in Daddy's walk-in closet just touching his clothes, like just she wouldn't take them down. She just kept touching them, but she always had to be doing something. So it's important for you as the caregiver to find out what works for your person, not
Right.
what everybody else is doing. But I also want to stress the importance of accepting help.
Mm-hmm.
It was really important to me, and it's a whole different situation because we were open to accepting help, but we didn't have a lot of people who wanted to help. But if you are in a position where you have people that will say, I'll come and give you a break for an hour or let you just get out the house. Because sometimes I just wanted to go walk outside and not have to come back and wonder if mom had walked away to the mall or somewhere. Um, and I couldn't even get anybody to come and do that.
Right.
Were you blessed to have people that would help you with that, or did you feel like it was mostly all on you and your sister until your mom went into care?
Um, we did. I felt like it was mostly on us. I'm gonna be honest. We did have people that were willing to help. Okay.
Okay.
However, um, I don't know how open they meaning my parents were to them helping.
I got you.
I think that, because of the pride issue, they
Absolutely.
didn't really want everybody to know what was going on.
I
And
understand
I
that.
understood that, you know what I mean? But there were situations like I shared in a post that really this one doesn't have to do with mom, it had to do with dad, with him being over medicated. And I shared that in that post that I made a couple I
Mhm.
don't know, last week or whenever it was. And he was hallucinating. And we did have a very good family friend come and sit with him till the wee hours of the morning. And it's funny how God works, because my mom was pretty much, she was well into her dementia state at that point, right?
Mhm.
She was still here. My sister and I were not here 100% full time. We were still going back and forth from Charlotte, here.
Mhm.
It was just her and my father. But during that time, my mom sounded like she didn't have anything wrong with her. She knew that dad something was wrong with dad. He was seeing people that weren't there. And thank the Lord, we did have a good friend of the family, who came and sat here until my sister and I got here. We just jumped in the car. I
Right.
don't know what time it was, 8 o'clock at night. We just threw some stuff in a bag, jumped in the car, because she called us. It's like, I need your help. I don't know what's going on with your dad.
Mhm.
And they did sit with him, and they were always willing to help this one particular person. My godmother was also very helpful, but outside of those two people, um, they really weren't too open to anybody
Yeah.
else.
I
um,
understand that. Trust me. And my
yeah,
because daddy was like he very private, and
yeah,
like you said, I think it's that whole generation. They like very private. They don't discuss family issues. They don't want
mhm,
everybody in the street knowing what's going on in the household.
right,
Um, and it was even with the having access to people, members of the church, that it was still very only certain people in the church did he even want to come to the house and take after mom. And so we had to respect that. We had to
mhm,
respect that. But I also wanted to mention, if you choose not to, the family chooses not to put a parent in a facility, which
mhm,
at one point my sister and I were trying to explain to dad why we felt we needed to do that, because we felt like mom was missing something that we were not qualified to give her.
mhm,
Uh, but he was adamant that as long as he had breath, she was not going. Uh,
mhm,
so, um, what I want to say is, we chose an agency that was referred to us to come in and kind of give me a break, because my sister was still living in Virginia at the time, and it was some of the most ill-equipped group of people I've ever seen in my entire life. I remember asking one girl, "Are you even trained to work with people with Alzheimer's?" Like, she's like, "No, like I don't even really know what that is."
Yeah.
So I called the agency and I'm like, don't send anybody else back over here because it's creating more problems. Like I go outside because I'm thinking, okay, there's somebody here with her. I can go out, get some fresh air, excuse me, sit and read a book or whatever. I come back, she's standing in the middle of the kitchen using the bathroom. And because you said you told her to go in the bathroom and she didn't go. So that's when I said, do you even know anything about working with Alzheimer's patients? You can't just say go in the bathroom.
Right. It's hard. It's hard. We looked for that too. We looked for that too. And it was so hard to find somebody qualified that we felt comfortable with coming in here to help mom. Um, quite honestly, mom didn't want anybody in here to be, I'm gonna be very honest with you. But you know, regardless, we at that point we were the people making the decisions, you know what I mean? And we there was and a lot of people, just a lot of agencies that we called outright said, well, no, we don't really work with people that have Alzheimer's, especially if they're doing ABC XYZ,
Yeah,
you know, name different things that they do. And I'm like, well, mom's definitely doing all of that, so I guess you're not coming in here, you know what I mean? And so that's you know, and my dad was the same way too, about not really wanting to put her anywhere. He thought he could handle it. He thought, and I just want to keep reiterating, this was when my sister and I were not here full time, you know.
yeah,
So he thought he could handle it, and it was too much for him, you know, because like I said, he never completely understood it, or
yeah.
he understood, he never just wanted to come to grips with it as it
Accept
related
it.
to
Yeah,
his wife, right?
absolutely.
And so yeah, after a few incidents happened that were just kind of like, okay, y'all, we got to do something. You know, I mean, we can't keep going forward like this. And you know, so we did the legwork and found a place that we felt comfortable with. And they did, the girl who ran that, now listen, there's, with that being said, anytime you put your parent in any type of facility, there is always some type of, you know, there's always going to be a fear of them not being taken care of properly, right? They're in a
Exactly.
facility, there's other people there that's got the same thing or worse. You know, there was
Yeah,
definitely people there way more progressed in their Alzheimer's and dementia than my
yeah,
mama was. You know, she was still able to put her clothes on and brush her teeth and wash her face and all that kind of stuff. But sometimes she was, but she would forget to do it, you know.
yeah.
Um, but you know, it's always that fear, right? But the girl who was over the memory care unit at where we put her made us feel comfortable. Now, you know, I can't ever tell you how good or bad the care was because I wasn't there 24/7, you know, but she did make us feel comfortable. She did different activities and she would always send us pictures and videos, and we were allowed to put this video device in her room where we could just call her anytime. I found it online and it was great. You
Mhm.
know, she would talk to us through there. They had, and I actually heard of some people saying that with parents in other facilities, the facilities wouldn't allow a device like that. And I'm thinking, well, why are they trying to hide something? You know what I mean?
Exactly, exactly.
You know, but yeah, I was very grateful that they allowed that. All we had to do was push a button and we could just call her name and she would come right to the screen and talk to us, you know.
Wow.
Yeah, so that worked out well. Um, but but it's not, you know, I want to just reiterate that it's what you think is best for your situation. You know what I mean? Everybody's situation is a little different. And
That's correct. That's correct.
you know, that's what we felt was best for our situation.
And
But
everybody will have an opinion
right,
about what you should or shouldn't do, but they're not there in the middle of the night when you need help. They're not there in the middle of the day when you need help. So
correct.
um, your opinion really doesn't matter. You can just really keep it um, because the people who are there dealing with it and that are the most affected by what's going on are the ones that have to make the decision. And I
Right.
wanted to get back for just a moment to the question that Doretta asked about the sternness, because it came to a point with my mom where we, you know, had to do that. And it's not easy because
Mm-mm.
even though they're acting like a child, you know that's still your mama. That's still your, and you don't want to discipline your mother. Like You
Right.
don't want to say, Mama, stop that. Mama, leave that alone. Didn't I tell you? But and you got to save them. You got to do what you got to do. And I tell you what was really funny to us is out of all the people that she recognized or that she would respond to, my youngest son, Trey, who was on the show earlier today, is one of the people. Mom would be doing whatever, and I could yell, Trey, mom's in here acting up again. And he would walk in the room and he said, Mama, what are you doing? And her whole disposition would change. He would sit down next to her, she'd rub his hand, and they would talk, and I'd just be like, oh my God. I think she had a thing for young men back in the day or something. But it goes back to you have to do what you think is best for
Yeah.
your situation. Um, you can't just let them walk out the door in the highway because you're trying to, you don't want to. Well, that's my mom. I don't want to say anything. You have to do what you have to do to
You have
protect
to, yeah, yeah. There was a time my mom was going to walk down Jersey Road. I don't know where she was going. I said, Mom, we live on a busy street. You are not walking anywhere. We're not. Well, and there's at one point in time I said, well, I'm just going to walk with you. And she was
them.
like, oh, girl, you ain't got to walk with me. And then, so that was just how I dealt with her. I would just say something silly and she would start laughing or something,
Yeah,
and then because at one point in time I was that person like Trey was, because my sister was here and I wasn't, right? Because work with, we were just trying to balance work schedule,
right.
that kind of stuff, right? Because at the same time you're still trying to balance your own life and your
Still
own,
trying to live your life. Still trying to
right,
live your life.
right, which is also very challenging. And there would be times that Denise is a much more sensitive person. She's got a huge heart, you know what I'm saying? And I'm more of the, I mean, I can be nice, but there, I can be more stern. You understand
Yeah,
what I'm
yeah.
saying?
I
And
understand.
so she would call me sometimes when I was in Charlotte and put mom on the phone and like, okay, mom, what are you doing? Whatever. And, and I would talk to her, whatever, and that would calm her down. Um, so everybody played a part. Everybody had to kind of play their own part, with taking care of her. And we figured out our roles, to a certain extent. But then when it just got so bad that we just felt like, okay, I don't know if any of us are capable of handling what's happening right now.
Yeah.
So, that's when we made, the decision to put her in assisted living. But yeah,
And
yeah.
I've seen a couple of my Facebook friends who are no, Doretta, it is not easy. Parenting the parent is not easy
No, not at
because
all.
it's a conflict. It's not even, it doesn't even go along with the order of things. Like you just
Right.
like I'm the child and you're the parent, and now it's like all of a sudden I'm the parent and you're the child, and it's not easy to do. But it is important. I was a couple of my Facebook friends I've seen recently who are caregivers for their parents have made comments about not being able to get help or not being able to get assistance, and some of them discussing whether or not to put their parents in a facility or not. And I just think it boils down to, it's like you say, it's an individual's case. Each situation is different, and you have to be honest.
Yeah.
Greta, you have to be honest about what you feel. Some days I felt anger, some days I felt resentment, every day I felt exhaustion. Um, and then at the same time I was overly protective. Like I didn't don't
Mhm.
ask me a whole lot of questions about how my mom's doing because I know you don't really want to know to help, you just want to know to be nosy. um that
Amen,
was
girl.
my whole attitude. Because if you wanted to help you would come over here and help. But it's that change in the dynamic that is extremely challenging, and you have to have a certain personality to deal with it. And I think you have the mixture, the balance. You have the sternness that is so necessary, but you care and you're loving and you're gentle because that's where you come from. That's your source. That's the roots where you come from. So there's love there, but at the same time, it's like, how do I guide them like they did me when I was younger? How do I take this woman and keep her safe, keep her protected, while at the same time hoping I'm helping her to develop? Because even with the deterioration, I think they told us there were like 6 or 7 stages of Alzheimer's. I
Hmm.
can't, but at every stage, it requires a different level, a different amount of, whew,
Hmm.
a different amount from you as the caregiver, and you just have to be educated. And I tell people all the time, at the end of the day, you have to take care of you,
Yeah.
because otherwise, if you don't, like, there were days I just wanted to lay in the floor and just cry, because not only was I there with mom, who it seemed never ever slept, um, and but there was dad who had all his health issues, and so he was constantly just sitting there giving orders for stuff that he needed done. He couldn't even lay down in the bed because he couldn't breathe laying down. So he slept sitting up in a chair. So all night long, I got one ear open trying to make sure he's still alive and breathing. And then the other ear is making sure mom's not sneaking out the front door. So
That's
it was exhausting. It was exhausting. But
yeah.
it's the love you have for them that pushes you to keep going.
Somebody commented, and I wholeheartedly agree with them. Not on this post, but on a post that I shared about us going live a couple days ago.
Mhm.
And she said, they took care of us.
Yeah.
So, it's like at this point, at that when they get to that point, it's like you feel obligated to take care of them, and you want to do it because it's your parents, but it's not an easy thing to do for anybody, even and a lot of them are very, like we keep talking about, very prideful. Even with dad, who had no cognitive issues, he was here in this house by himself for a while, and he didn't want to disturb me or my sister's lives in Charlotte. I don't want to be a burden. I don't
Yeah.
want to, um, so he, with his 90-year-old self, still thought he could get in the car and drive to Fruitland and pay his Verizon bill at the Verizon place.
Yeah.
Big
Yes.
fruit, you know what I'm saying? And I think he like scraped the side of the house with the car, and so, but he just wanted to stay so independent. And I'm like, Dad, you need somebody there with you, like, not only because you're getting older and you can't move around as well, because by this time he's on a walker. We did get, now that did work out well, getting an agency for him. They came in, cooked and cleaned, and
Okay.
it watered the plant, cleaned up the house, that kind of stuff. They would cook 3 or 4 meals. The agency worked out well for him because he didn't have the cognitive piece, but he wanted to stay independent for the longest time. He didn't want us to, no, don't stop your lives in Charlotte for
Yeah.
me, or whatever. And I'm like, Dad, I get that, but you're 90 years old on a walker in a house by yourself,
Yeah.
you know. Luckily we had cameras and stuff in here where we could see him. So, if he had fallen or something, heaven forbid, we could at least see that. And he had the life alert thing and all of that. But I mean, he was hard headed. He was very hard headed
See,
about.
my dad was the total opposite, Connie, because he was like, I don't care what y'all got going on. I need somebody to come here and help me with your mama. He did. He called. He's like, listen, uh, I need you to come in here and help me with your mom. I was like, oh my God. So that's when I started thinking, all them people in that church, like, can't nobody, like,
Right, right.
but that's a whole nother
Yeah,
show.
that's a whole nother topic. Yeah,
Yeah,
seriously.
that's a whole nother show. Um, but I did want to make sure before we end the call, if anybody has any more questions or comments, and I say this every single show, I have the hardest time seeing comments on my Facebook page. But if you have any comments,
Let me
If
look.
you can get them on the StreamYard app, I can see them better. I don't know what's going on with the Facebook thing. But if you have any comments or any questions for Belinda, we're more than happy to share. I mean, to answer what we can answer. I do want to say, when I was preparing for this conversation, I looked up some resources because that was one of the things that. Thank you, Doretta. We appreciate you also. Transparency always helps
Yeah.
people. Um,
Thank you.
One of the things we didn't have was a whole lot of resources and a lot of information. So I wanted to make sure to share with you all that there is something called a National Family Caregiver Support Program. If you are a caregiver for your aging parents, they recommend that you contact, well, you can look up www.caregiving.org. I guess I should have typed that. W www. I told you about the technology thing, didn't I? www.caregiving.org. If you go to that website, there's a lot of information there, several agencies that are listed there, and you can find something in your area. Because again, it's not just about getting care for your parent that you're taking care of. And I know a couple of my friends are doing like I was doing, you and Belinda was doing. Actually caring for two parents, so that's a challenge. So there's information there, there are resources there. Do what you have to do to keep yourself as healthy as possible.
Yeah.
And I'm just glad we had this conversation
Me too.
because I have been, I had asked for someone to have this conversation with me some time ago, but nobody responded. So I've learned about divine timing. I've learned to exhale more. I think part of it is that because of my age and because of my health challenges or what have you, I find myself getting anxious when stuff is not happening when I want it to happen because I just keep thinking I'm running out of time.
Hmm.
Uh, but Holy Spirit reminds me over and over again to just relax. When it's time, it will happen. And so when I saw your post the other day, it was that's what it jumped in my spirit. This is the time for this conversation.
Yeah.
And so I'm glad that you posted that because it is it's hurtful when you see your parents are hurting and you think people are not doing all they can to help
Yes. Very much so.
them.
Very much so. And when people don't, I think it's important to understand that nobody knows what's going on behind your closed doors. Nobody knows. Nobody completely understands what's going on in your household but you.
Yeah.
And that's why I felt the need to make a lot of things public about my parents on Facebook to dispel any type of rumors
Mhm.
of what was going on. And but I do think it's important to remember that we all have our own set of challenges, and and our parents have their own sets of challenges, and we can do all that we can do. But I think it's important that what you said as well, Jamie, about making sure you keep yourself healthy, because if you're not healthy, you can't be any good to anybody else.
Absolutely.
So your parents, or anybody else for that matter. So
And I
you
absolutely believe that a lot of the health challenges that I face right now are because of years of ignoring myself
yeah.
and worrying about other people. Um, I remember, I'm going to share this and then we're going to close. I remember when I was always having pains in my neck. And some people said I was just doing it to get attention. Like, okay, yeah. But anyway, so I went to a chiropractor. um, I actually went to get a massage. And
Hmm.
what the whole time the lady was massaging my neck, I was literally crying and screaming. And she
Oh,
said, "Hold on a minute." She said, "This is not a tight muscle moan thing like somebody like got really tight muscles, and I can tell that it may hurt a little bit, but it's getting better." She said, "It's something else going on here. I think you need to see a chiropractor." So she calls this guy who's a friend of hers who owns a chiropractic office here in Salisbury and told him she wanted to send me over as one of her guests. And they did an x ray. and he showed me. You know, you have everybody has that what they call it, the swan curve in your neck thing.
Mm-hmm.
But my vertebrae and my neck were fusing together for some reason. And he's like, you need to get this addressed like as soon as possible. It was 10, 15 years went by, and I kept complaining about my neck. I kept having ache pains, but I never did anything about it. A year after my parents died, the vertebrae in my neck cracked. And
Oh,
I had my first stroke, and that's when I had my first spinal fusion surgery. So my point with sharing that is that for years I should have been taking care of that, but I was too busy worrying about everybody else.
mm-hmm.
So at some point you have to just stop and say, I love you and I'm going to be here for you. But today I need to focus on me.
Yeah, we have to do that.
Yeah. And
We do.
caregivers really have to do that. Like,
Yeah.
even if it's not but an hour or two a day, like I just need to go somewhere where I'm not anywhere around them. I need to go to the park and read a book. I need whatever, but I just need a break. You
Yeah,
have to do it for yourself.
we
Did you
do.
have anything else you want to share with our listeners?
No, I appreciate you having me on here. I made a disclaimer on my Facebook page. Anybody in the area who needs a friend, needs an ear or whatever, I have no problem with talking, sharing my experiences, giving a piece of advice if you need it, need somebody to cry to. I'm always here. I can't say I'm available 24/7, but I will talk to you when I am,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
I just sometimes you do need just somebody to listen, somebody to just hear who has been through what you're going through. If you've
absolutely.
never been through it, then you don't really understand it. So,
Yeah. And it's just, and if it makes you feel better, it's good for people to say, I'm here. You can talk to me anytime and just be a listening ear.
yeah,
But in some situations, you need to talk to somebody who can say, girl, I know exactly what you're going through. And let me tell you what happened for me and how I went through that. And you can get through it as well. And it'll change your whole life. And so
yeah,
that's another reason why I am so grateful for you joining me tonight. I know that this conversation will bless so many people, those that are watching now and those that will be watching later. I know that lives will be blessed and people will be encouraged just because you came and shared your story.
thank you. I appreciate that.
All right. Well, thank you for joining me, and we will talk again soon.
Okay, lady.
All right. Have a good one.
All right, you too.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye bye.